Tom stepped onto his porch as the sun slipped low behind the open fields and quiet fences. He was a big rancher with broad shoulders and steady hands, and people in the nearest town knew him as a man who spoke little and worked hard. The air smelled of dry grass and warm wood, and the slow sound of cattle carried from far across the land. He had just washed the dust from his face, and he wanted nothing more than a calm evening and a simple meal. He looked over the gate and the long dirt path, checking the locks and the barn the way he always did. Everything looked normal, and that made him breathe easier for a moment. Then he saw someone at the edge of the porch steps, half in the shadow, not moving. At first he thought it was a stray traveler resting, or maybe a neighbor who had trouble with a truck on the road. He took one step forward, then another, careful and quiet like he did around nervous animals. The figure shifted, and a weak sound came out like a broken breath. Tom stopped and lowered his posture so he would not look like a threat. The woman's hair was messy, her clothes were dusty, and her hands trembled as if the cold had reached inside her. She tried to speak, but the words came slowly, as if they hurt to say. She said they hurt her and she ran until she could not run anymore. Tom's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed calm. He told her she was safe on his porch, and he would not let anyone scare her again. He asked her name and waited without pushing. After a long pause, she whispered that her name was Lena, and her eyes darted toward the road like she expected someone to appear at any second. Tom could see fear in her face more clearly than dirt or sweat, and he knew fear like that did not come from simple bad luck. He did not ask who they were, and he did not ask what happened in detail, because he could tell she was holding herself together by a thread. He offered water first, because water was something real and gentle and easy to accept. Tom went inside and returned with a glass of water and a clean blanket. He placed the glass where she could reach it without him leaning too close, and he held the blanket out like a fence that gave comfort instead of danger. Lena hesitated, then took the blanket with shaking hands, wrapping it around her shoulders as if it was armor. She drank slowly, and her breathing began to settle, though her eyes still searched the darkening yard. Tom stayed a few steps away, giving her space, watching the gate and the road with the quiet focus of a man who had guarded livestock from storms and thieves. The ranch was far from town, and that distance usually brought peace, but tonight the distance felt like a test. He helped Lena inside, moving at her pace, never rushing her. The house was simple, strong, and warm, built to last through wind and heat. Tom guided her to a small guest room near the kitchen and pointed out the bathroom, then stepped back and told her she could rest as long as she needed. Lena stood in the doorway like she was waiting for a hidden cost, because kindness had not been free in her world. Tom did not bargain and did not demand a story, and that seemed to confuse her more than any threat. He placed a small lamp by the bed and left the door slightly open, so she would not feel trapped. Then he returned to the kitchen and made tea, because it was the kind of thing his mother used to do when someone was scared. That night Tom did not sleep, even when the house grew quiet. He sat at the wooden table with his hands around a mug that had long gone cold. The porch light painted soft shapes on the floor, and every sound outside made him listen harder. He thought about Lena's words, about the way she flinched when he moved, about the way her eyes looked past him as if danger could be hiding behind anything. Tom had lived through hard seasons, but this felt different, because it was not about weather or money or broken fences. This was about a person who had been pushed down so often that she did not believe standing up was allowed. Tom stared toward the window and promised himself that his home would not become another place where she had to fear. At dawn he cooked breakfast, because mornings were easier when there was a task to do. The smell of warm bread and tea filled the kitchen, and the light turned the walls a soft gold. Lena came out slowly, still wrapped in the blanket, her steps careful like she was walking on thin ice. She looked surprised to see a plate waiting for her, and she sat down quietly, keeping her hands close to herself. Tom sat across from her, not too near, and ate in the same calm way he always did. After a while Lena spoke in short pieces, telling him she came from a place not far away, a place where some people used fear to control others. She said she tried to leave before and it became worse, so this time she ran without warning anyone. She said she did not want trouble to follow her, and her voice shook when she looked toward the window. Tom listened without judging and without interrupting. He told Lena that fear did not own her anymore, not while she stayed on his land. He said the ranch had strong doors, strong locks, and wide open views, and he said he would see any danger long before it reached the porch. Lena looked at him like she was trying to decide if he meant it, because she had heard promises before that turned into traps. Tom did not try to convince her with big speeches, because he believed actions were louder than words. He showed her a phone, a charger, and the number for a local helper office in town, and he said they could call when she felt ready. Lena nodded slowly, and her shoulders lowered a little as if a heavy weight had shifted. By midday, the calm of the ranch felt thin, like a quiet surface hiding deep water. A truck slowed near the outer road, not coming in, not leaving fast, just watching the gate for a breath too long. Tom noticed it right away, and his body became still and alert. Lena saw it too, and color drained from her face as if the morning warmth vanished. Tom stepped between her and the window without thinking, blocking her view and giving her a wall made of his presence. He told her to stay inside and breathe, and he walked out to the porch with steady steps that did not show fear. The truck rolled on, but the message remained, and Tom understood it clearly. Someone out there was searching, and they were not searching with good intentions. Tom returned inside and closed the door with care, not with panic. He told Lena that the ranch had rules, and the first rule was that nobody enters without his permission. He checked the gate again, checked the locks again, and he made sure Lena had the guest room and the kitchen and a safe corner where she could sit without seeing the road. Lena asked him why he was helping when it could bring problems, and her voice sounded small in the big room. Tom answered in the same steady tone, saying that strength meant nothing if it was only used for work and never used for protection. He said he was not looking for a fight, but he would not allow fear to walk into his home and take someone away. Lena blinked hard, and tears came quietly, not loud, not dramatic, just real. As the sun started to lean toward evening again, Tom stood on the porch and watched the road. The ranch that once felt like a quiet world now felt like the center of a coming storm. Tom knew that whatever chased Lena would test him, and he knew the town would talk once they noticed she was here. But Tom also knew something else, something he had forgotten for a long time. He knew that doing the right thing was not supposed to feel easy, and that was exactly why it mattered. He kept his eyes on the dust of the road and his mind on a single promise. No one would take Lena from that porch again. Tom woke before sunrise, not because he was rested, but because his mind refused to slow down. The ranch was quiet, yet every sound felt louder than usual, like the land itself was holding its breath. He stepped outside and checked the gate again, scanning the dirt road for fresh tracks. The soil was undisturbed, but that did not ease his thoughts. He knew fear rarely announced itself loudly, and danger often waited for calm moments. Inside the house, Lena sat at the kitchen table with her hands wrapped around a warm cup. She had not slept much either, and dark shadows rested under her eyes. Still, there was a small change in her posture, a slight straightening that suggested she felt safer than the night before. Tom noticed it right away, because he paid attention to small details. He asked her how she felt, and she said tired but alive, as if those two things were not always connected in her past. After breakfast, Tom showed Lena around the ranch so she would know where she was. He walked slowly, pointing out the barn, the storage shed, and the wide open fields that stretched farther than the eye could see. He explained which paths were used and which were left untouched. Lena listened carefully, her eyes moving across the land as if she was memorizing it for comfort. The openness surprised her, because she came from places where walls were close and exits were few. As the morning passed, a neighbor arrived near the fence line. The man leaned on his truck and waved, his face filled with curiosity. Tom walked over calmly, keeping his body relaxed but alert. The neighbor asked simple questions about the woman staying at the ranch. Tom answered without sharing details, saying only that someone needed rest and safety. The neighbor nodded slowly, though interest still lingered in his eyes. Word traveled fast in quiet places, and Tom knew the town would soon be talking. Lena watched from a distance, her hands tightening whenever she saw another person near the land. She trusted Tom, but trust was fragile, and it cracked easily when memories returned. Tom noticed her fear, and later reassured her that not every question carried danger. He explained that people were curious, not cruel, and that curiosity did not always lead to harm. Lena listened, though she kept her distance, choosing safety over comfort. By midday, the calm shattered when a car appeared at the main road and stopped. Two figures stepped out, standing near the gate but not crossing it. Their posture was stiff, their movements careful, like they were measuring the space. Tom saw them from the porch, and immediately placed himself between the house and the gate. Lena froze when she noticed them, her breath catching in her chest. She whispered that those people looked familiar, and fear rushed back into her eyes. Tom walked toward the gate with slow and steady steps. He did not raise his voice and did not show anger. He asked what they wanted, keeping his tone firm and clear. One of them said they were looking for someone who had run away, speaking as if the words carried no weight. Tom answered that no one on his land was leaving against their will. His size and calm presence made the air feel heavy. The figures exchanged glances, clearly surprised by his response. They said they would return with help if needed, trying to sound confident. Tom replied that the gate marked a boundary, and crossing it without permission would bring consequences. He did not threaten and did not shout, yet his words carried strength. After a long pause, the figures returned to their car and drove away, dust rising behind them like a warning. Lena collapsed into a chair once they were gone, shaking harder than before. Tom knelt beside her, keeping his hands visible and his movements slow. He reminded her that she was still safe and that fear did not mean weakness. Lena struggled to breathe evenly, her body reacting before her mind could catch up. Tom stayed with her until her shaking eased, never leaving her alone in that moment. That evening, the ranch felt different. The open land that once brought peace now felt like a line of defense. Tom locked every door and checked every window, though he knew locks alone were not enough. Lena helped prepare dinner, wanting to feel useful and normal. They worked in silence, finding comfort in simple tasks. For Lena, being allowed to help without being ordered felt new and strange. As night fell, the lights stayed on longer than usual. Tom explained a simple plan, saying that if anyone returned, they would not face it alone. He told Lena that fear lost power when shared. Lena listened, though doubt still lived in her heart. She asked why he was willing to risk so much for someone he barely knew. Tom answered that doing nothing would be the greater risk, because some lines should never be crossed. Later, Lena finally shared more of her past, speaking softly so the words did not overwhelm her. She explained how control was masked as care and how silence was forced through fear. Tom listened without judgment, his face calm but his eyes heavy with understanding. He realized that healing would not come quickly and that safety was only the first step. Lena finished speaking with tears on her cheeks but relief in her chest. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling through the fields and brushing against the house. Tom stood by the window, watching the darkness beyond the porch light. He knew the people who came earlier would not forget the ranch easily. He also knew backing down was no longer an option. The quiet rancher had become a shield, and shields did not move away from danger. When Lena went to rest, Tom stayed awake once more. He sat near the door, listening and thinking. He thought about how one choice could change two lives forever. The ranch was no longer just land and fences, but a promise made real through action. Tom tightened his grip on that promise as the night deepened. Part 2 of their story ended not in peace, but in resolve, setting the stage for what would come next. Tom felt the weight of the coming day even before the sun rose. The ranch lay quiet, but the silence no longer felt peaceful. Every sound carried meaning now, every shadow felt like it could move. He stepped outside and walked the fence line again, boots pressing into the dirt with slow purpose. The land was still his, wide and open, yet it had become something more than property. It had become a place that needed guarding. Inside the house, Lena stood near the window, watching Tom from behind the curtain. She had slept only in short pieces, waking again and again from memories that refused to fade. Still, something inside her had changed since arriving here. The fear was still present, but it no longer owned every thought. Seeing Tom move with calm control gave her a sense of balance she had not felt in a long time. After breakfast, Tom suggested they make the day useful. He believed fear grew stronger when the mind had nothing else to hold on to. Lena agreed, though her voice carried hesitation. He showed her how to feed the animals and how to move through the barn safely. The work was simple, but it demanded focus, and that focus gave Lena a break from her thoughts. Each small task completed made her feel less like someone hiding and more like someone living. As the hours passed, Lena began to talk more freely. She spoke about small things first, like places she once liked to visit and the sound of rain against old rooftops. Tom listened while working beside her, never pushing for details. He knew trust was built through patience, not pressure. Lena noticed that he never stood too close and never blocked her path, and those quiet choices mattered more than words. Near midday, a sound reached the ranch that made both of them stop. A vehicle moved slowly along the road, its engine steady and deliberate. Tom raised a hand, signaling Lena to stay back. He moved to the porch and watched as the vehicle passed without stopping. Still, the message was clear. Someone was testing the edges of the ranch, measuring Tom's response. Lena felt the old fear rush back, sharp and cold. Her hands trembled, and she stepped back as if expecting the door to close behind her. Tom turned toward her and spoke calmly, reminding her that passing did not mean claiming. He told her that some people watched because they feared resistance more than they admitted. His words did not erase her fear, but they slowed it enough for her to breathe. That afternoon, Tom made a decision he had avoided for years. He drove into town. He did not tell Lena to come with him, and he did not leave her unprepared. He explained where she would be safest and how to lock the house. Lena did not like the idea of being alone, but she trusted Tom's judgment. She watched his truck disappear down the road, hoping it would return soon. In town, Tom spoke with people he rarely needed before. He spoke with helpers, with quiet listeners, with those who knew how to protect without force. He shared only what was necessary, careful with every word. Some listened closely, others nodded with concern. By the time Tom left town, he knew he was not alone in this anymore. That knowledge steadied him more than he expected. Back at the ranch, Lena tried to keep busy. She cleaned the kitchen, folded blankets, and organized shelves that did not need organizing. The work gave her control over her space, something she had lost long ago. Still, every sound outside made her pause. When Tom finally returned, relief washed over her face before she could hide it. Tom told Lena that help existed beyond the ranch, and that safe paths forward were possible. He did not promise quick fixes and did not paint the future as easy. He spoke honestly, explaining that change required courage and time. Lena listened carefully, weighing each word. The idea of stepping beyond the ranch felt frightening, but the idea of staying frozen felt worse. As evening approached, the sky darkened faster than usual. Clouds gathered low, and wind moved across the fields. Tom prepared the house for the night, checking doors and lights once more. Lena sat nearby, watching his steady movements. She realized that strength was not always loud or forceful. Sometimes strength looked like consistency, like showing up again and again without needing praise. Later, Lena shared something she had never said out loud before. She admitted that part of her feared safety because it felt unfamiliar. Pain had shaped her world for so long that peace felt unstable. Tom listened without surprise, understanding that healing often felt uncomfortable at first. He told her that learning to live without fear was like learning a new language. It took time and patience, and mistakes were part of the process. Outside, night settled over the ranch once more. The wind eased, but tension remained. Tom stood on the porch, scanning the darkness with practiced eyes. He knew those who came before might return, and he knew standing firm would matter. Inside, Lena rested in the guest room, not sleeping deeply, but resting enough to regain strength. For the first time in a long while, Lena allowed herself to imagine a future not defined by fear. It was not clear or easy, but it existed, and that was enough for now. Tom remained awake, guarding both the land and the fragile hope growing within its walls. Part 3 of their story did not bring resolution, but it brought change. Both of them were no longer just surviving. They were preparing to move forward. The morning arrived with a soft light that spread slowly across the ranch and touched every fence and field with calm warmth. Tom stood on the porch and breathed deeply, feeling a steady strength settle inside him. The long days of watching and waiting had led to this moment of decision. He knew the ranch would soon return to silence, but the change it created would remain forever. Inside the house, Lena prepared herself with quiet focus. She moved carefully, not out of fear, but out of respect for how far she had come. Her reflection in the small mirror looked different now, not perfect, but stronger. The fear that once filled her eyes had loosened its grip. She wrapped the blanket one last time around her shoulders, not because she needed it, but because it reminded her she survived. Tom and Lena sat together at the table and shared a simple meal. Their silence felt comfortable, shaped by trust rather than worry. Tom explained again that support waited in town, people who would help her rebuild without judgment. Lena listened and nodded, her heart racing but not pulling her backward. She understood that safety did not end at the ranch, and healing required movement. They drove toward town with the windows slightly open, letting fresh air wash through the truck. Lena watched the road stretch ahead, reminding herself that she was choosing this path freely. Tom kept both hands steady on the wheel, aware of every mile passing beneath them. When they reached their destination, the building looked plain and welcoming, nothing like the places Lena feared. She paused before stepping out, and Tom stood beside her without speaking. Lena walked inside with slow confidence, each step carrying weight and meaning. She spoke with gentle listeners who offered calm voices and patient understanding. Tom waited nearby, respecting her space while staying close enough to reassure her. Lena felt nervous, but she also felt heard, and that made all the difference. She realized that asking for help did not make her weak, but brave. After some time, Lena returned to Tom with a softer expression on her face. The future was not fully clear, but it existed, and that was enough. They talked about next steps and safe plans, taking everything one piece at a time. Tom listened carefully, offering support without control. Lena felt something new grow inside her, a quiet confidence she had never known. They drove back to the ranch as the sun climbed higher. The fields welcomed them with familiar openness, and Lena felt grateful rather than trapped. She gathered her few belongings and walked through the house slowly, touching the walls and doorframes that once protected her. Tom stood nearby, giving her time without rushing the moment. Both understood that goodbyes did not erase what was shared. Outside, they stood together near the porch where everything began. Lena thanked Tom in a voice steady and sincere. She told him his kindness changed her path when she had no strength left. Tom replied simply, saying she found her own strength and only needed a safe place to see it. Their words were plain, but their meaning ran deep. Lena left the ranch with a sense of purpose guiding her forward. She looked back once and saw Tom standing tall against the wide land. The ranch returned to quiet, but it was no longer empty of meaning. It held proof that one choice could change a life. Tom watched until the road was clear again. He felt tired, but his heart was light. The ranch returned to its familiar rhythm, yet something inside him remained awake. He knew that strength was not measured by size or power, but by the willingness to protect and care. As evening settled once more, Tom sat on the porch and watched the sky fade into soft color. The storm that once hovered had passed, leaving growth in its wake. He understood now that silence could hold courage as well as peace. The story that began with fear ended with hope. The ranch stood quiet again, but it would never be the same. It had been a place of refuge, of choice, and of change. Tom closed his eyes and breathed deeply, ready to return to his simple life with a fuller heart. Lena walked forward into a future built on courage rather than fear. And in that shared moment of change, both found something lasting.